They were born into a world most of us can only dream of. A world where fried chicken empires span continents, where a single app can make you a billionaire before 30, and where the taste of home becomes a multi-billion-dollar global phenomenon. But what happens when these Filipino fortunes collide with the tech capital of the Pacific Northwest? Washington State, home to Amazon, Microsoft, and Starbucks, a place where 9.4% of all workers are in tech, the highest percentage in America. A state where over 178,000 Filipino-Americans have built lives, careers, and communities since the very first documented Filipino arrived as a lumber mill worker in Port Blakely back in 1888. That's over 135 years of Filipino history in the Evergreen State. But here's what most people don't know. Some of the richest Filipino families in the world have planted their flags right here in Washington. Their restaurants feed Seattle's hungry masses. Their apps live on phones across the state. Their offices tower over Bellevue's skyline. And their combined wealth? It's staggering. Today, we're counting down the Filipino families and individuals with the biggest fortunes connected to Washington State. We're talking billionaires. We're talking empire builders. We're talking about people who started with nothing. Dishwashers, ice cream vendors, immigrant parents working government jobs, and turned their dreams into fortunes that would make your head spin. From James Beard, award-winning chefs transforming Seattle's food scene, to tech moguls whose mother emigrated from the Philippines, to fast food dynasties that have Americans lining up at 5 a.m. just for a taste of chicken joy. This list will take you through the incredible journeys, the jaw-dropping net worths, and the untold stories of Filipino wealth in Washington State. But we're saving the biggest revelation for last. The family at number 1 controls an empire so vast, so influential, that their presence in Washington State represents just a fraction of their global dominance. Their story started with a single ice cream parlor and ended with a fortune worth billions. So whether you're Filipino, whether you call Washington home, or whether you're just fascinated by how ordinary people build extraordinary wealth, stick around. Because by the time we reach our number 1 spot, you'll never look at that Jollibee drive-thru the same way again. Let's begin. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a woman who decided that Filipino food deserved a place at America's finest tables. Melissa Miranda grew up in Seattle, Washington, surrounded by the flavors of her grandmother's kitchen. The adobo, the sinigang, the kare-kare. These weren't just meals, they were memories, traditions, connections to a homeland thousands of miles away. But when Miranda looked around Seattle's dining scene, she noticed something troubling. Filipino cuisine was nowhere to be found among the city's celebrated restaurants. French bistros earned rave reviews. Japanese omakase commanded 3-figure price tags. Yet the food of her ancestors remained hidden in home kitchens and modest eateries, never given the spotlight it deserved. Miranda trained in some of Seattle's most prestigious kitchens, learning technique, discipline, and the art of transforming ingredients into experiences. But she never forgot where she came from. In January 2020, just weeks before a global pandemic would devastate the restaurant industry, she made the boldest decision of her career. She opened Musang in Seattle's Beacon Hill neighborhood. The name means wild cat in Tagalog, and the restaurant would prove to be every bit as fierce as its namesake. Opening a restaurant is risky enough. Opening one that serves a cuisine most American diners have never experienced, in a neighborhood far from downtown's foot traffic, right before the world shut down. That takes something beyond courage. That takes conviction. Musang didn't just survive. It thrived. Critics took notice, diners lined up, and the recognition followed. Miranda has been nominated as a James Beard Award semifinalist and finalist 3 times, the highest honor in American culinary arts. In 2022, Food and Wine magazine named her one of America's best new chefs, placing her alongside the country's most innovative culinary talents. She followed Musang with Kilig, her second restaurant in Seattle's Chinatown International District, expanding her mission to bring Filipino flavors to a wider audience. Miranda represents something new in Filipino-American wealth building. She's not in tech, she's not in real estate, she's in culture. She's proving that preserving and elevating Filipino traditions can be just as valuable as any startup. And she's opened a door that others are now walking through. Speaking of walking through doors, our number 9 entry is a couple who took Miranda's philosophy and pushed it even further into the realm of luxury. Aaron Verzosa and Amber Manugid aren't just serving Filipino food. They're creating an experience that rivals the world's finest tasting menus. Verzosa, a Filipino-American chef, spent years training in Seattle's restaurant scene, developing a vision that seemed almost impossible. What if Filipino cuisine could command the same respect, the same prices, the same reverence as French haute cuisine or Japanese kaiseki? What if diners would pay premium prices not for foie gras or wagyu, but for dishes rooted in Philippine tradition? His wife Amber, with her expertise in hospitality and front-of-house operations, believed in this vision enough to stake their future on it. In December 2018, they opened Archipelago in Seattle with just 8 to 12 seats. This wasn't a restaurant, it was an intimate journey through Filipino flavors, a multi-course tasting menu that honored tradition while embracing modern technique. The gamble was enormous. Tasting menus require diners to surrender control, to trust the chef completely. Convincing Americans to take that leap for a cuisine many had never experienced seemed like a long shot at best. But Verzosa and Manugwid understood something crucial. Filipino food isn't just delicious, it's deeply personal, rooted in family, celebration, and memory. By creating an intimate setting where they could share those stories alongside each dish, they transformed a meal into an emotional experience. The results speak for themselves. In 2019, Eater Seattle named Archipelago Restaurant of the Year. In 2021, the New York Times included it on their list of America's favorite restaurants. In 2023, Verzosa received a James Beard Award nomination for Best Chef Northwest. What Miranda started, Verzosa and Manugid elevated. Together, they're redefining what Filipino cuisine can be in America. But none of this would be possible without the generations who came before them, the pioneers who built the foundation for Filipino success in Washington state when the odds were stacked impossibly against them. Which brings us to number 8 on our list, and it's not an individual, it's a collective. It's the founders and leaders of the Filipino community of Seattle, established in 1933, 92 years of organized Filipino presence in the evergreen state. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Filipino immigrants faced in 1933. The Great Depression had devastated the American economy. Anti-Filipino sentiment ran high. Laws prevented Filipinos from owning property, from becoming citizens, from accessing the same opportunities as white Americans. The first documented Filipino in Washington Territory had arrived in 1888 as a lumber mill worker in Port Blakely. But by the 1930s, the community remained marginalized and vulnerable. Despite these obstacles, Filipino leaders in Seattle pooled their meager resources to create something that would outlast them all. The Filipino community of Seattle became a mutual aid society, a cultural preservation organization, and a launching pad for future generations. They built networks when networking meant survival. They created scholarships when education seemed out of reach. They preserved traditions when assimilation pressures threatened to erase Filipino identity entirely. Today, the organization's board includes executives from Microsoft, certified public accountants, attorneys, and entrepreneurs. The Filipino Community Village project continues their mission into the 21st century, and the Filipino community of Yakima Valley, established in 1938, built the first Filipino community hall in the entire United States. These pioneers created the infrastructure that made everything else possible. Without them, there would be no Melissa Miranda, no Aaron Verzosa, no Filipino tech executives at Amazon and Microsoft. The wealth we celebrate on this list grew from seeds they planted nearly a century ago. But if community organizations built the foundation, the next generation would construct something entirely new on top of it. A bridge between Filipino immigrant values and American tech industry success. At number 7, we meet a different kind of wealth builder. Joseph Sunga doesn't have his name on a building. He hasn't founded a company that made headlines. But his story represents something perhaps even more significant: the quiet accumulation of expertise, equity, and influence that defines a new generation of Filipino-American success in Washington State's tech economy. Sunga was born and raised right here in Seattle to Filipino immigrant parents. They taught him the values that would shape his entire career: work hard, build for the future, and never forget to lift others as you climb. He took those lessons and applied them to one of the most competitive industries on Earth. Over more than a decade in tech, Sunga developed a reputation as the kind of product leader that companies desperately need, but rarely find. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing excellence. That excellence paid off in ways that don't always make the news, but absolutely build wealth. Sunga was a key employee at not one, but 2 startups that got acquired by tech giants. The first was purchased by Amazon, the second by Uber. If you understand how startup acquisitions work, you understand what this means. Key employees don't just get a paycheck, they get equity. They get stock options that vest over time. They get a stake in companies worth billions of dollars. Today, Sunga serves as a staff product manager at Aurora, the self-driving technology company that's building the future of transportation. He's not just along for the ride. He's managing teams that are literally changing how humans move through the world. But what makes Sunga truly remarkable isn't just his corporate success. It's what he does with his position. He mentors early-stage startups at Techstars Seattle, one of the most prestigious accelerator programs in the country. He works with programs at the University of Washington to advise minority-owned businesses in underserved communities. He mentors underrepresented professionals who want to transition into product management, opening doors that were once closed to people who looked like him. Sunga embodies something his immigrant parents understood instinctively. Success means nothing if you don't bring others along with you. His net worth isn't published in Forbes. You won't find him on billionaire lists. But equity in Amazon, equity in Uber, a senior position at a cutting-edge autonomous vehicle company, and the compound growth that comes from smart career moves over more than a decade. This is how Filipino-American wealth is being built in Seattle right now. One stock grant at a time, one mentorship at a time, one generation lifting the next. And Sunga isn't alone. Which brings us to number 6 on our list, a man who spent nearly 2 decades at one of the most valuable companies in the history of capitalism. Ajay Meneses was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in the New York and New Jersey area by Filipino parents. His path to Washington State would take years to unfold, but when it did, it would place him at the heart of the Pacific Northwest's tech empire. Meneses earned his bachelor's degree in finance from Pace University in New York, but his ambitions extended far beyond Wall Street. He set his sights on a company that was reshaping how the entire world worked: Microsoft. For 18 years, Meneses climbed the ladder at one of the most competitive corporations on the planet. 18 years of performance reviews, of proving himself again and again, of developing expertise that few possess. He became a specialist in risk management, finance, and business operations, the unsexy but absolutely essential disciplines that keep billion-dollar companies from imploding. While engineers wrote code and product managers launched features, Meneses was ensuring that the foundation remained solid, that risks were identified before they became disasters, that the numbers told the truth. But Meneses wasn't just building a career. He was building a life rooted in faith and community. He served in faith formation groups including Bukas Lubsa Diyos, a Filipino Catholic charismatic community, and his local parish in Kirkland, Washington. While pursuing his executive MBA at Seattle University, he expanded his community service efforts, demonstrating that professional ambition and spiritual commitment could coexist and even reinforce each other. He earned his Certified Management Accountant designation, adding another credential to an already impressive resume. Recently, Meneses made a move that signals just how valuable his expertise has become. He transitioned from Microsoft to Intapp, a publicly traded technology company serving financial services and professional firms, as their head of enterprise risk management. This isn't a lateral move. It's an executive-level position at a public company, the kind of role that comes with significant compensation, equity grants, and influence over corporate strategy. But here's what truly distinguishes Meneses. Despite his corporate success, he hasn't forgotten the community that shaped him. He now serves on the board of directors of the Filipino community of Seattle, bringing his financial expertise and business acumen to an organization that has supported Filipino advancement for over 9 decades. The same organization we discussed at number 8. Meneses is now helping lead it into the future. 18 years of Microsoft stock, an executive position at a publicly traded company, a seat on the board of Seattle's oldest Filipino organization. This is what Filipino-American wealth looks like when it's built methodically, patiently, over decades of disciplined work. Sunga and Meneses represent something crucial about Filipino success in Washington state. They're not outliers. They're the vanguard of a growing professional class. Filipino-Americans who are accumulating wealth through corporate careers, stock options, and strategic moves in the tech industry. They're building the kind of generational wealth that will fund scholarships, launch businesses, and create opportunities for decades to come. But as impressive as their stories are, we're only halfway through our list. And the fortunes we're about to encounter operate on an entirely different scale. We're leaving the world of millions and entering the world of billions. We're moving from professionals who built wealth through careers to entrepreneurs who built wealth through empires. The next entries on our list didn't just climb ladders, they built them. At number 5, we recognize a form of wealth that doesn't show up on Forbes lists, but shapes the very fabric of Washington state. This isn't about one family or one fortune. This is about the collective economic power of Filipino nurses, the backbone of American healthcare, and the unsung heroes of Washington's medical system. The numbers are staggering. Filipino nurses represent 28% of all foreign-born nurses in the United States, the largest group by far. 4% of every registered nurse in America is Filipino, despite Filipinos comprising barely 1% of the total population. This isn't coincidence. This is legacy. When the United States colonized the Philippines from 1898 to 1946, American administrators established nursing schools with Americanized curricula taught in English. They created a pipeline that would feed American hospitals for generations. What began as colonial policy became professional destiny for hundreds of thousands of Filipino families. In Washington state, this legacy runs deep. Filipino nurses staff hospitals from Seattle to Spokane, from Tacoma to Yakima. They work the night shifts that others avoid. They hold the hands of patients taking their final breaths. They showed up every single day during the darkest chapters of a global pandemic, and they paid for it with their lives. On January 15th, 2020, Washington State recorded the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in the United States. The virus had arrived, and Filipino nurses were on the front lines from day one. What followed was a tragedy that exposed the brutal inequality of sacrifice in American healthcare. Despite comprising only 4% of the nursing workforce, Filipino nurses represented between 24 and 31% of all nurse deaths from COVID-19. They died at rates 7 to 8 times higher than their share of the profession would suggest. They died caring for strangers in a country that too often treated them as invisible. Kathleen Vargas represents those who survived and kept fighting. A registered nurse with a Master of Science in nursing, Vargas works as an operating room nurse and grievance officer at St. Joseph Medical Center in Tacoma, Washington. The hospital was founded in 1891 by the Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia and now operates as part of Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. Vargas didn't just show up to work, she advocated for change. She led the fight to ensure that internationally trained nurses received equal recognition for their experience, challenging systems that devalued the expertise Filipino nurses brought from their home country. In 2025, the Washington State Nurses Association honored Vargas with their Health Equity Award, recognizing her tireless advocacy for fairness in a profession that too often overlooked those who looked like her. Meanwhile, the Philippine Nurses Association of America continued its quiet work of supporting Filipino nurses relocating to Washington State, providing winter coats to 70 nurses who had never experienced cold weather, helping with driver's licenses, assisting with housing in an unfamiliar land. The collective wealth of Filipino nurses in Washington State cannot be measured by a single net worth figure. It is measured in thousands of professional salaries, in homes purchased, in children sent to college, in communities sustained by steady paychecks and sacrifice. It is generational wealth built one 12-hour shift at a time, one life saved at a time, one family lifted into the middle class at a time. But if Filipino nurses represent wealth through collective sacrifice, our number 4 entry represents wealth through singular vision. We are now entering billionaire territory, and the story you are about to hear begins with a Filipino immigrant mother, a California state government job, and a son who would help create one of the most influential apps in human history. Robert Cornelius Murphy was born on July 19, 1988, in Berkeley, California. His father, Richard Cornelius Murphy Jr., was Irish-American. His mother, Rosie L. Go Murphy, was a Filipino immigrant who had come to America in the early 1980s seeking opportunity. Both parents worked as California state employees, stable jobs, modest incomes, nothing that would suggest their son would one day be worth billions. Bobby grew up in Berkeley, attended the School of the Madeleine for elementary school, and went on to St. Mary's College High School, both private Catholic institutions. His parents believed in education. They believed in discipline. They believed in the promise of America. Murphy enrolled at Stanford University, majoring in mathematical and computational science. It was there, as a member of the Kappa Sigma fraternity, that he met Evan Spiegel. The two collaborated on a failed startup called Future Freshman before Spiegel brought Murphy an idea from their classmate Reggie Brown, an app where photos would disappear after being viewed. In 2011, they built Peekaboo, which would soon be renamed Snapchat. After graduating, Murphy took a job as a software engineer at Revel Systems, an iPad point-of-sale company. But his heart was with Snapchat. He used half of every paycheck to cover the startup's server bills. Half his income month after month betting on an app that most people dismissed as a sexting gimmick. That bet would prove to be one of the greatest in Silicon Valley history. In 2013, Mark Zuckerberg offered to buy Snapchat for $3 billion. Murphy and Spiegel said no. They purchased copies of Sun Tzu's Art of War for their 6 employees and prepared to battle Facebook. In March 2017, Snap Incorporated went public with a valuation of $24 billion. Murphy and Spiegel held over 45% of the company's stock and more than 70% of the voting power. Bobby Murphy became one of the youngest billionaires in the world. Forbes named him the second youngest in 2015, and Time magazine included him among the 100 most influential people of 2014. His net worth today fluctuates between $2 and nearly $5 billion, depending on Snap's stock price. Colleagues call him the billion-dollar monk, quiet, reserved, almost never giving interviews. His first employee described him as almost like a monk, noting he had never seen Murphy upset. And here is what connects this Filipino-American billionaire to Washington State. Snap Incorporated operates offices in both Seattle and Bellevue. The Seattle office sits steps from Pike Place Market. In June 2024, the company signed a lease for over 76,000 square feet in Bellevue's Mid-Station building. Bobby Murphy's company is not just present in Washington State, it is expanding here. The son of a Filipino immigrant is now among the wealthiest people on earth, and his empire has planted roots in the Evergreen State. At number 3, we meet a woman who transformed personal struggle into a $500 million empire. Sheila Lirio Marcelo was born in 1970 in the Philippines, and her path to extraordinary wealth began with a problem that millions of families face every single day: finding reliable care for the people they love. Marcelo didn't come from money. She came from determination. She earned her bachelor's degree in economics from Mount Holyoke College, graduating magna cum laude. But she wasn't finished. She went on to Harvard University, where she earned not 1 but 2 graduate degrees, an MBA and a law degree, both with honors. She was building credentials that would open any door in America. But the door she ultimately walked through was one she built herself. As a working mother, Marcelo experienced firsthand the impossible challenge of finding trustworthy care for her children and aging parents. The systems that existed were fragmented, unreliable, and frustrating. Most people would have simply endured this struggle. Marcelo decided to solve it for everyone. In 2006, she founded Care.com, which would become the world's largest online platform for finding and managing family care. The concept was elegant: connect families who needed caregivers with caregivers who needed work, and build trust through reviews, background checks, and transparency. Between 2006 and 2012, Marcelo raised $111 million in venture capital from investors including Matrix Partners, Reid Hoffman, New Enterprise Associates, and USAA. The smart money believed in her vision. On January 24, 2014, Care.com went public. Marcelo had taken an idea born from personal frustration and transformed it into a publicly traded company. The recognition followed. Fortune named her one of the top 10 women entrepreneurs in 2009. Ernst & Young crowned her Entrepreneur of the Year in 2010. The World Economic Forum designated her a young global leader in 2011. In 2014, Harvard Business School presented her with their Alumni Achievement Award. She was the youngest recipient in history and only the second Filipino to receive the honor, following Jaime Zobel de Ayala. That same year, President Benigno Aquino, the third of the Philippines, awarded her the Pamana ng Pilipino, the Filipino Heritage Award. In 2020, Care.com was acquired by IAC for $500 million. Marcelo had built, scaled, and successfully exited one of the most important platforms in American family life. But she didn't stop. In January 2024, she launched Ohai.ai, an AI-powered household management platform. She founded Proof of Learn, a Web3 education venture. She became a venture partner at New Enterprise Associates and joined the boards of the Philippine Development Foundation and the Asian American Foundation as a founding member. Sheila Lirio Marcelo didn't just build a company, she created an entire category, and she proved that Filipino entrepreneurs could compete at the highest levels of American business. But our number 2 entry built something even larger, a fast food empire that defeated McDonald's on its home turf and is now conquering Washington state one chicken joy at a time. Tony Tan Cactiong was born on January 5, 1953, in Davao del Sur, Philippines. His parents were Chinese immigrants from Fujian province who ran a small restaurant. Young Tony spent his childhood washing dishes and clearing tables. He wasn't born wealthy. He wasn't given connections. He was given a work ethic and a palate that understood what Filipinos wanted to eat. He graduated from the University of Santo Tomas with a degree in chemical engineering in 1975. But engineering was never his destiny. At 22 years old, Tony used his family's savings to open 2 Magnolia Dairy ice cream franchise locations in Manila. Customers kept asking for hot food, so he added hamburgers and fried chicken. Within 3 years, the hot meals were outselling the ice cream. Tony made a decision that would change Philippine business history. He abandoned the ice cream franchise entirely and bet everything on fast food. In 1978, he needed a name. The family chose a B, representing hard work, and made it Jolly, representing the joy of eating. Jollibee was born. Then came the real test. In 1981, McDonald's entered the Philippines. The Golden Arches had conquered the world. Everyone told Tony to sell before he got crushed. He refused. Instead of copying American flavors, he doubled down on Filipino taste. His chicken joy was seasoned for Filipino palates. His Jolly spaghetti was sweet, made with banana ketchup and sliced hot dogs. His burgers were different. Today, Jollibee has double the restaurants and double the revenue of McDonald's in the Philippines. The giant didn't crush the bee. The bee crushed the giant. Forbes estimates Tony Tan Cactiong's net worth at approximately $3.2 billion, making him the 5th richest person in the Philippines. Jollibee Foods Corporation operates over 9,500 outlets under 19 brands worldwide. And now, for our number 1 spot. We're not just crowning Tony Tan Cactiong, we're crowning an entire dynasty, the Tan Cactiong family empire, and its strategic conquest of Washington state. The family's Washington presence began in 2010 when Jollibee opened in Tukwila South Center Mall, the first location in the state. For 13 years, it was the only option for Washington's 178,000 Filipino-Americans craving the taste of home. Then came Tacoma in October 2023, then Seattle on June 7, 2024, when customers lined up at 5 in the morning, 4 hours before opening. But this is bigger than fried chicken. Tony's wife Grace co-founded the Jollibee Group Foundation, funded by 1% of corporate profits. His brother Ernesto serves as president and CEO of the entire corporation. His partnership with Ed Garcia II built Double Dragon Properties, with Hotel 101. Global now preparing for a NASDAQ listing through a $2.3 billion merger. The Tan Cactiong family represents Filipino wealth at its most ambitious. A dishwasher's son who built a global empire, defeated the world's largest fast food chain, and is now feeding hungry customers from Manila to Seattle to Toronto. 3 Washington state locations and counting. A combined fortune exceeding $3 billion. a legacy that stretches from a small Davao restaurant to the Rainier Valley. This is the Tan Cactiong family, the richest Filipino family in Washington state. And there you have it, the incredible journeys, the jaw-dropping fortunes, and the untold stories of Filipino wealth in Washington state. What we've witnessed today isn't just a list of rich people. It's a testament to the Filipino spirit, that unique combination of hard work, family loyalty, and entrepreneurial courage that has transformed immigrants and their children into empire builders. From Melissa Miranda and Aaron Verzosa, putting Filipino cuisine on Seattle's culinary map, to the community organizations that have supported Filipino advancement since 1933. From the tech professionals like Joseph Sunga and AJ Meneses climbing corporate ladders at Microsoft and beyond, to the Filipino nurses whose collective economic power sustains Washington's healthcare system. From Bobby Murphy, whose Filipino immigrant mother raised a son who would co-create one of the world's most influential apps and bring Snap Incan's offices to Seattle and Bellevue. From Sheila Lirio Marcelo, who solved her own problem of finding family care and built a $500 million company in the process. And finally, to Tony Tan Cactiong and the Tan Cactiong family, the dishwasher's son who rejected McDonald's and built his own fast food empire, now feeding hungry customers in Seattle, Tacoma, and Tukwila, with 3 Washington state locations and counting. These stories share common threads: immigrant struggle, family sacrifice, bold vision, and relentless execution. They prove that the American dream, and specifically the Washington state dream, is alive and well for those willing to work for it. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: Filipino wealth in Washington state isn't just about individual fortunes. It's about community. It's about the 178,000 plus Filipino-Americans who call this state home, the nurses who care for our sick, the chefs who feed our souls, the tech workers building our future, and the entrepreneurs who remind us that extraordinary success is possible for anyone willing to dream big enough. So the next time you're standing in line at Jollibee on Rainier Avenue, remember, you're not just buying fried chicken, you're participating in a billion-dollar story of Filipino excellence. The next time you see that Snapchat notification, remember, behind that app is a Filipino-American whose mother believed in the promise of America. And the next time someone tells you that immigrants don't build wealth, don't create jobs, don't contribute to America's success, show them this list. Because Filipino wealth in Washington state isn't just growing, it's thriving. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story of extraordinary wealth. Drop a comment below, telling us which family story inspired you most. Until next time, stay hungry, stay humble, and keep building your own empire.